Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is Rubidium. Today we are looking at this camera, the Canon Eos R, which is not out yet. I'm shooting this in the pretty awesome test bay at Canon in Burbank. They have lights, they have focus charts, they have a whole bunch of cool monitors and things to look at. So I was able to get my hands on this camera and just wanted to play around with it a little bit, put it through its paces, just get a sense of what the usability is for cinema, because that's what I'm most interested in. How does this function as a B or a C camera for the C200, C300 users out there? If you have a 5D Mark III or Mark IV, is this the camera you've been waiting to upgrade with? If you don't have a second camera and you're thinking about maybe getting a second C200 for alternate angles, will you be able to get away with the EOS R, which is maybe a quarter or a third of the price? Because this is a mirrorless camera, the dynamics are different. Going back, you have this area here, which is the customizable ring that you're able to set to control. This right now, it's controlling the aperture. But you can also set it to control shutter speed or any number of things that the camera lets you customize. There's a big flip screen on the back, which is a huge step up from the 5D Mark II and Mark III that I have, because you can turn this around, and if you're operating a second camera or using this as a camera on a tripod, you can bend the screen around and be able to check what the camera is shooting. I guess the main thing about this camera is that it's just the next evolution of Canon's stills camera philosophy. You know, it's smaller, it's lighter, it's faster, it has a more sophisticated processor in it. It fits one SD card instead of the SD and CF card that my 5D Mark III does, which meant that this camera was never going to be able to record in 4K RAW, just because the data transfer rate that SD can achieve just isn't the same as CFast 2.0 cards. And they didn't want to put a CFast 2.0 card in this camera because the media is more expensive and it's going to scare away a lot of the lower end photographic consumers that this camera is going to be the target audience of. It has a big, bright, beautiful touchscreen on the back. It functions a lot like the M50, which I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, but it's much more responsive, it's brighter, it's clearer, gives you access to all the things that you would need. When I put the camera into video mode, I'm able to use my dial to adjust the aperture, and then I'm able to tap on what I want to focus on. This camera also has dual pixel autofocus. It will track the subject's face. It'll give you a track variety of faces and allow you to tap or switch between which face you want in focus. It'll track an object as you move towards it or move beside it or move away from it. Being the next evolution of stills cameras with the video component, it is just that much faster, that much quicker, that much more responsive. The focus for stills works by tracking where your eye is looking. You can turn that on, so there's no more taking photos, resetting. You just look at the person's face, or it tracks the face and it'll keep it tight. You can also turn on eye tracking if you're at really low apertures. This is an 85 1.2, so your depth of field is going to be incredibly thin. This camera will actually track the subject's eyes, lock onto it so that your photograph is going to be sharp, even at razor thin depths of field. So I'm shooting a video, I'm able to change aperture while it's shooting, I'm able to change ISO while it's shooting, I'm able to monitor the audio, which you can put through the audio port, and I'm able to turn the audio up and down by tapping the screen rather than adjusting something inside the camera settings. So that brings us to the video capabilities. This camera shoots 4K, but it does so by cropping in on the sensor. This is due to, Canon says, the processing and data requirements from the 4K. It has a 1.7 crop. You can use the entire sensor to film video if you film in 1080p. You can then go down to 720p and shoot slow motion. So who is this camera for? Should you wait to get it? Should you sell your 5D Mark II or Mark III or Mark IV and jump onto the EOS R bandwagon? The EOS R is really worth checking out. $2,100. It's cheaper than the 5D Mark IV, and it has most of the same features. It has C-Log, which comes free with this camera. You have to pay to get it upgraded on the 5D Mark IV. It has 4K video cropped like the 5D Mark IV. It's able to record 10-bit 4:2:2 video out to something like the Blackmagic Video Assist, which I have, and yet this camera can get an adapter to have the same EF lenses you have on the C2 or C300, but the main lenses you're going to probably use on this are the R lenses that were designed for this. So you're going to need lenses that won't be interchangeable necessarily with your C200, C300. The main reason that I would like to get a hold of this camera is for using second angles during interviews or generally shooting second angles in film. You almost always want a wider angle for your second camera. Not always, but usually, and to move to a full frame that's going to give you much more field of view is a huge trade up than trying to get another C200 and move it back or just go wider. This is going to give way more bang for your buck. The big question mark over this is the crop factor. But I really don't see that being a huge problem, at least for my workflow. I would much rather, especially on a wide angle, shoot 1080p because most of my clients still, 5 or 6 years after 4K became a big thing, most projects are still delivered in 1080p. No one that I work with is demanding 4K or may ever demand 4K. It's a lot more data and a lot more work for a negligible upgrade in resolution. Your crop factor 4K on the EOS R is still going to be wider than a non-cropped same lens on the C200 because the sensor of this is so much bigger. It has this cool trick where when you open the front of the camera, a little gate comes down over the sensor, sort of like the shutter. So you can't get dust or dirt in there. It's going to be really helpful for outdoor and adventure photographers that work in snow or have to change a lens when there's a lot of dust around. I mean, this is such an obvious thing. I don't know why someone didn't come up with this years ago. It's also going to be one of the best, most fully featured stills cameras that Canon has ever released. So for less than the 5D Mark IV, you're getting much more in a package. And as much as I love the click and the shutter release of my 5D Mark III, I understand that mirrorless is the future. You're able to bring a lot more camera in a lot smaller footprint for a lot less price. If you like shooting with Canon's color science, if you have Canon lenses like I do, then this really is the future. Thank you to Canon Burbank for letting me check out the camera. The only restriction that they stipulated was that I wasn't allowed to put an SD card in the camera and actually get footage. But as soon as they allow that, I'll come back here, shoot some test shots and some scenarios with this camera and get some test footage for you guys to check out. That is my look at the Canon EOS R. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Leave your questions in the comments and I will see you next time.